So I'm going to take you back. It's mid-9th century. This guy, Charlemagne, he is dead. And things are changing. During this time of change, a youth is delivered to the Abbey of St. Gall, here, in what is now the modern city of St. Gallen. It's on the shores of Lake Constance in Switzerland. He's the child of noble parents. He's very frail. He has a stutter. And probably he's being sent to this monastery because that's what you do with a frail, stammering youth. It's an embarrassment to the family, you know, you put him off somewhere else. At that time, as in the ancient world before that, to have a stammer is to be an idiot. Remember Emperor Claudius, for example? So, and he is sent as an oblate. And an oblate is a child dedicated by their parents to a monastic life. In handing him to the monks, they say his name is Notker, and of course monks, kind of a prototypical frat house atmosphere. I'm sure they asked him to say something funny, and he stammered his way through it, and then they, laughed. And they gave him the nickname Notker Balbulus, which is Latin for Notker the Stammerer. So, but he has arrived at the Abbey at a very opportune moment. They've just been given autonomy by this guy. He's the son of Charlemagne, Louis the Pious. Yeah, Louis the Just, also Louis the Debonair. And being given autonomy means they no longer have to pay tithes to the local bishop. They also, in the next 70 years or so, had no marauders, no armies coming through, so they just gathered up wealth and power and became a really big center of learning in Europe, maybe the biggest at the time. And they filled their library with books. Yeah, more like non-science books. But actually science books too. So, and that library today looks like this. Yeah, there's a map. It's over the top when you go there. I've been there a few times. It's a Baroque, this is the Baroque version of this library. It's cherubs everywhere and books. And when you walk through the door, there's an inscription over your head which says in Greek, because it's just like the library at Alexandria, which I have not been to because, it doesn't exist. Yeah. It says an apothecary of the soul. And, for a book fetishist like me, it is the mecca of book fetishization. In fact, you have to take your shoes off, and put on these little furry booties so you don't mar the floor. So Notker, this is him. Notker arrives right at the start of this golden age, and he throws himself into literary pursuits. The first thing he does is write a biography in meter of St. Gall, who is the founder of the Abbey. And in it, he tells the story of this Irish hermit coming to Switzerland. If you come to St. Gallen today, you will see this coat of arms. Rampant. And yes, in the center there's an erect bear penis. It's highlighted in red. And the reason for this is the story. When the Irish monk St. Gall came to the place that was to be his hermitage, he was attacked by a bear. But he kind of reasoned with the bear, or he kind of changed the bear's heart. And the bear went back in the forest and brought some wood, and they made a fire together, and they got to know each other better. And now, whenever you see a representation of St. Gall anywhere, he's there, his little bear friend, and he's still bringing wood for their fire. Well, yeah. So, he also wrote a martyrology. You should all know this term, of course, the history of the lives, sufferings, and deaths, of course, of the Christian martyrs. Usually there's one per day of the year. He didn't quite do them all, but close enough. But if you go to the library, that library, You can go onto the shelves and pull down this 10th century book, and you can untie the little green rope they've used to bind it together, and open it up and read it. And I have actually read a couple of Notker's books. He is very endearing. He writes in this casual style. He's personable. He loves to quote Virgil. That's like his thing. You know, these are all things that to a set of bookish monks living alone together, separated from the world with only their books and each other to keep company in those long winter months, it's just the kind of thing that's totally endearing to them. So he quickly, there he is, Notker again, he quickly becomes everybody's favorite monk. He's appointed librarian of the monastery, that library. A century later, his biographer, Eckhard IV, describes him as delicate of body, but not of mind, stuttering of tongue, but not of intellect, pushing boldly forward in all things divine. And he says that even a century later, the monks cannot say his name without bursting into tears. I just need a moment here. Okay. I do. Okay. But there's one thing that really made his name, and it's why I, as a sometimes composer of music, I know of him, because when I was in music school, this is the received version of Western music history that I was given. He's right there at the beginning. And it was told to me that he is the first Western classical composer we actually know the name of. So you're a monk, and you're again at Mass. You know, and this happens like always. You have to get up and go to Mass, then you have the midday Mass, then there's Vespers often, and then like 2 in the morning, someone comes and wakes you up, you gotta do Matins. So there's lots of singing. It's a big deal. You get to the Alleluia, and that's this moment where if it's a special day in the church calendar, and there's lots of them, the bishop is over here doing something, and he has to get over here to do something special. And to cover this bit of stage business, as we say in the theater biz, they start extending the last note of the Alleluia, and it gets really long. So in 9th century notation, you can see it's the 4 vowels of the Alleluia, and the last A kind of goes on and on and on, and then it goes like that, and then like that, and then this. And you have to sing these from memory. And this is not the only Alleluia, right? This is just one of them. And even this notation, which is notation of the time, it's just a shorthand. So you had to know the tune. And this notation has only barely come into being. So really, all these Alleluias are just being passed from monk to monk orally. God, just, okay. In the very first line of his Liber Hymnorum, which I have, also the commentary volume, Notker says, "When I was still a young man, and the very long melodies, repeatedly committed to memory, escaped my fickle little heart, I began quietly to contemplate how I might somehow tie them down." And his invention is this. Not the modern music notation on the left, because that's how we now try to capture the ineffable sounds of music today, but by writing that poem underneath, which follows the melody, 1 syllable per note. It captures the structure of the melody, the special day, and the stresses follow the music. I'm going to play it for you.
Natus ante saecula Dei Filius invisibilis in terminus, et quem fit machina celi ad pere manis et intelligentio, per quem diges et orelabant et seiterum reciprocat, quem veni in al sepoli voce consonasem per canum.
You know, this reminds me of a story. A friend of mine really wanted to become a Gregorian monk, but they never got the chance. But these are, they're not just mnemonic devices. It turns out he wrote these really beautiful poems, and that is what made them famous. These so-called sequences. Uh-oh. Yeah. A mnemonic device for remembering the series of pitches in a plain chant, et cetera, et cetera. And collected in this book, they take Europe by storm, and soon everyone is writing them. And eventually these texts are sung by themselves and become important works of their own. Some from a few hundred years later, you know, one who had an odd Salon talk, the Dies Irae, Stabat Mater, et cetera. Okay, so now we're going to jump forward in time. It's the spring of 2008, and I and the Empress, who's in the audience, are on our way to Switzerland, and it's exactly like this, you know, except there's cows prancing and, you know, chocolate. And you get to St. Gallen, and it looks like this. It looks like Disneyland. There's these storybook houses, and people lick the streets clean at night and something. But I'm there for this. I was commissioned to write a mass, one of these liturgy settings, for the Cathedral of the Abbey of St. Gall, the one where Notker used to live. And I knew this story, and I had read some of the books, and so I dedicated it to him, and that's why it's called, in Latin, the Mass of the Blessed Notker Balbulus, monk of St. Gallen. When I told some of my friends here about this, my friend Andrew, sometimes producer, you know, his reaction was like, what? Because, like, don't they know about you? And I said, I was a little insulted by that, but I said, actually, they do, and in fact, that's how I got the gig. It turns out the casting couch works in the mass writing business exactly the way it works in all other professions. Can I play you a bit? I'm just going to play you a bit. Yeah. And in fact, you're going to see this in situ, in the cathedral. It's quite beautiful. I mean, the place. So, yes, there were people crying. Yes. So if you go to the Abbey Library today, this one, where Notker was the librarian, and visit the gift shop, you can buy a CD of this performance. But you know what, you don't have to go all the way to Switzerland, because I gave some to Odd Salon, and they're at the merch table tonight. This mass that's dedicated to Notker, the frail, stammering youth. In 1513, the church did eventually beatify him because of this love cult around him. They made him the patron of both musicians and stammerers. And this is why it's meaningful for me, because both of these afflictions I have suffered from in my life. So with that, I'd like to raise a glass and end with this quote from one of his many admirers: "Being tongue-tied may inhibit speech, but cannot inhibit a soaring imagination." Woohoo!